Welcome to the Private Practice Pro podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping therapists cultivate success. Here's your host, Kelley Stevens.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Private Practice Pro podcast. I have one of my dearest friends here, Alex Steric. And Alex, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So go for it.
Cool.
Tell us who you are.
All right. Let me go into that. Hi, everybody. Kelley, I'm so excited to be talking to you. I just feel like anytime I get to talk to you, I'm like, yes.
I know. Before we had to push record finally. I was like, we have to talk on the camera. Otherwise, we're going to use our whole recording session just talking about random shit.
Totally. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Steric. I have a private practice, actually both in Westlake Village and Ventura, California. I just opened a new space in Ventura, which is where I live. So I'm very excited for that. I primarily work with moms, and in particular, postpartum moms who are struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety. I do some trauma work as well. I'm trained in brain spotting. So I love utilizing brain spotting with moms in particular. And I really my practice focuses on anxiety, perfectionism, feeling not good enough, really helping moms and women just really feel more confident in their lives. Right. So on the side, I also offer some consultation to licensed therapists, and I do some supervision as well for associates. So I love doing that. I love mentoring. So that's basically what I do. I'm also bilingual. I realize I do not say this.
Yeah, you need to say that way more.
What am I doing? It's like I just assume that people know and they don't.
Right.
So I'm actually bilingual and bicultural. I'm half Venezuelan and I speak fluent Spanish, so I can offer services in Spanish as well.
I feel like that needs to be the headline of your website. You're right. You don't say it. I very rarely hear you say it. And there's such a shortage of Spanish speaking therapists. And I feel like you got to put it out there, dude. I actually have to remember to tell my husband, Sam, because he's a psychiatrist and speaks Spanish and does psychiatry in Spanish.
That's awesome. I didn't know Sam spoke Spanish.
Yeah, I know. I forget too. And the other day he was telling me, he's like, I had a Spanish speaking session and was talking about whatever medicate, had to figure out something. And he was asking me if I knew any bilingual therapists. So I don't know why anyway, off camera, we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
And you're 25 minutes away from our house. So
yes,
anyway,
exactly.
Okay, Alex. So we've known each other for a long time. And I also know your mom, which we got to give a shout out to Alex's mom on the show. And we don't have to obviously spend tons of time talking about your mom, but I think it's when therapists are multiple therapists in the family, I think it's always interesting. So, and your mom, is your mom an LCSW? She's a school counselor.
She is a psychologist. So she has her master's in educational psychology. She also has a PhD. She has actually multiple master's degrees. My mom is a rock star. But yeah, she did most of her career was as a school counselor, as a high school counselor. So
yeah. I just remember your mom. So it's always fun when I meet my friends who are my age through their moms. Yeah. Which actually shockingly has happened to me with some of my dearest friends. And so I met your mom before I met you. Yeah. And I remember just, she's not super tall, first of all.
No, she's not.
But she is a force. And I remember when she was working in the high schools and I, see teenagers, there would be a teen that needed some extra support and the school might be giving a little pushback about that or whatever. And I would call her up and she'd be like, I know, I got my eyes on that kid. I am going to figure it out. And I was like, who is this woman? And when I finally met her in person, I see her come walking down the hallway and she's wearing cowboy boots, some brightly colored thing. And, she's not super tall. And she is just a force. She's not huge, but when she walks through a high school, it was amazing. I was blown away. And then she was like, you need to know my daughter. And she is beyond obsessed with you. I mean, she adores you. And she was like, you have to meet my daughter. And like all these years later, we're friends. So I don't think we actually like got set up through her. I think we worked at the same place, but I was like, oh, that's Dr. D's daughter. Like, she's special.
I love hearing those stories. And, my mom is like one of my best friends. Like, she is like my best friend. And so it's just so special when I get to hear the vision that other people have of my mom, because, clearly I have my vision of my mom and my perspective of her. And she truly is just such an amazing person. And so to hear other people's stories of her, I'm like, yep, you just captured it.
We're in her cowboy boots. Yeah, no. She went to bat for so many of the kids that I worked with in ways that I had never seen other school counselors do it. So, and everyone loved her. She'd be like pulling something off that like, the school might not normally be stoked with, of giving them extra time or something. And everyone would do it with a smile on their face, which was like what blew me away. She somehow got everyone to approve it, and they loved her.
Yeah, she had like the confidence to just be like, I'm going to say it like it is, whether you like it or not. And somehow, even if they didn't like it, it was like, okay, Dr. D said it. So, we go with it.
That is a skill I feel like I don't have. Like, I feel like when I set boundaries with people, they're not stoked about it. But some people have that skill. Some people are able to set those boundaries, and then actually, I think you do, because so, I think it's a good idea not to necessarily like say all the places we've worked together. We like to talk about the present, but we did work together in a treatment center where we worked with teenagers. And I would say that's true of you too, Alex. Like, when you set a boundary, people do it happily. They're not pissed.
It's funny, like both of my parents have that ability to do that. And it's really interesting. My dad actually started his career as a social worker as well.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, this was back in the day where you didn't need a degree to be a social worker. And so he worked in a children's home with kids. And, so it's really interesting just how life kind of like aligns. Mm-hmm. And I think things happen for a reason, and all of that. But my dad has the same kind of capacity to set boundaries in this way that people just like, for the most part, obviously nothing is 100%, but people respect it. They hear it. They're able to like just have respect for him, even if they don't necessarily like the boundary that was set.
I love that skill in a therapist. I think it's one of the most, like, I know one of our good friends, Jennifer Elder, who I need to have on this podcast too, is similar to this, where she sets these boundaries and you don't even realize she's doing it. And you're like, wow, I feel so safe with you. And I find that I tend to refer to therapists like that do have really good boundaries, but are like able to convey them in a loving way,
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, we got off on a tangent.
No.
That's going to happen a lot in this episode.
It's to be expected.
Okay, so Alex, I want to ask you about, and like, I don't even think I sent you a list of questions. Whenever I have my friends on this podcast, I'm like, yeah, here's the link. I'll see you then. Whereas like, if it's somebody I don't know, I send them like a long list of questions. But here's what I want to ask you about is the first few weeks of having your own practice. So so first of all, just in time. So, we always think of life now, right? Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. But when were your first few months that you were totally on your own, that you weren't like working in a whatever?
Yeah. So that would have been May of 2019.
Wow. Isn't it crazy to think like a year later we were in a pandemic?
Yep. Like never would have imagined any of that stuff. And you know what though? Even if I would have known what I know now, still would have done it. It wouldn't have changed anything,
Oh, so isn't it like, I think about it as your friend and knowing you guys, I like made that private practice leap a couple years before you and a couple of our other friends did. And I kept on being like, you guys can do it. You got it, And I'm so glad for you that you did it prior to the pandemic, because I think that was a scary time. I think for people, some people kind of froze and stayed where they were. versus like just doing it and being like, because it turned out fine. Like, if anything, I feel like the pandemic in many ways made more people reach out for help.
Totally.
Okay, so when you were in those first few weeks, what was going through your head?
I honestly would say that once I was in it, I was in it. Like, I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to figure
work.
this out. Like, we are making this happen. I would actually say that more of what was going through my head was the anticipatory anxiety and fear of like the couple weeks before of like, oh my God, am I really doing this?
That last paycheck, maybe.
Yes. Like, and since I was a really young kid, I knew I wanted to be a therapist. Like, this was something I've known. I mean, since I was like basically in elementary school, they would like pair me with kids and were like, we know that Alex is like, the person who has compassion and empathy and is just there to be with people. And so I knew from a very young age, like, this is what I want. When I was in high school, private practice was like my goal. I want to own my private practice. I want to be a therapist. This is what I'm going to do. So I think that once I was in it, I knew that was my destiny. It was like, I'm here now. This is it. And so I'm not going to say that there wasn't any like fear or anxiety or trepidation of like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But I think I realized like so many of the fears I had were a lot of myths that I had been told along the way.
Yeah.
And that once I was in it, it was like, oh, some of those myths like truly don't exist, or some are true to a certain extent, but just because it's true doesn't mean I can't do it.
Oh, 100%. I can remember sitting at various times, we'd go to lunch and things. And I'm trying to think if you remember this. So we both worked in group practice prior to having our own practices, which I think can be a really great way to go, right? Because ideally you get to take some clients with you. You learn how to run a business. There's a lot of things you learn that you can then replicate into your own business. And I can remember sitting with you and us saying like, when I get to this number of clients in this group, then I'll make this leap. Do you remember that?
I think remember that.
For me, I think it was like 10 consistent every single week, full fee clients. Do you remember? I don't remember. What was it? Do you remember what it was for you?
I was right around that same number. Yeah. And, that was actually one of the things that I was scared about the most, because I'm really glad I went about, building my practice in the way that I did. I am so grateful that I started in a group practice. I don't think that I would be where I am today without that. So, that was the way for me. It's not the way for everybody, but I think it really helped. And I was really part-time in my practice. I was doing other things at the time. So like, it was really scary for me to think like, okay, I think I have about 8 to 10 consistent clients every week. And I'm going to do that because, the other therapists I was going to be sharing space with them that are my friends were like, had much fuller practices already. And I was like, am I really like, is this really what I'm doing? Is this smart? And so that's why I think it was more of the anticipatory kind of fear and stuff that came up for me of like, do I have enough clients already, to be able to do this?
I think so. I felt the same way because I think I left around the same number. I was a little, because I know people who are in groups and they leave with a full practice, like 20, 30 clients a week, 40 clients a week. Not that I would ever recommend seeing 40 clients a week. People. And I didn't, that was kind of my story too. I didn't necessarily leave with a full caseload because I was just ready. And I think like, I always tell people like those first 10 are the hardest to get. Like those first 10 consistent weekly appointments, once you reach that critical mass, like one, your clients start to refer back to you, which is great. And like the best feeling, especially when I always think it's fun. I'm wondering too, if you experience this, like when a teenager refers their friends to you.
Yes.
I'm like, I have reached nirvana. This is the coolest thing. I am the epitome of my coolness I'll ever be. That this teenager thinks that their friend should see me. But yeah, those first 10, it's like so scary. And then you got to like get furniture and get an office. Do you remember going to look for offices and like,
I do. Yeah. I remember looking at offices. I remember looking at furniture. I was so excited about the furniture part because like my like secret side wish I had gig is to be an interior designer. So I was like, I get to furnish a space. I get to like make this like my own. And what I love is like to this day, clients walk into my office and they're like, oh my gosh, your office is so beautiful. Like, I love it. I wish my house looked like this. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Like,
you're
I
like,
love
hire me, follow me on Alex Steric interiors.com.
By the way, but I still remember, I remember the day that we went and looked at the office that we're currently in Westlake. I will remember that like so vividly. And just like knowing like, this is it. This is the space. Like, this is what we're doing.
Okay, so that's an interesting question of too, like, because you guys looked at multiple spaces. How did you know that was the one?
Oh gosh, it was like, I mean, I hate to be all like woo woo, but like it was the vibe.
Woo-woo.
But like it was the vibe of the place. It was we had looked at like, I want to say we looked at 3 spaces, and this was one of the last that we looked at, I want to say. And even just from the pictures, you could tell like the grounds themselves. Like I'm big on like, I don't want to just be in a box. Like, I don't want to think about just being in the chair all day. Like, I need to get up and move in between sessions. Like, I want to take a walk outside. Like that stuff is important to me. So I wasn't just looking at the internal space, it was the external space. And this place, like, it actually reminded me of my childhood apartment that I grew up in. I grew up in Marina Del Rey in an apartment complex like that had this big water feature in the center. It was by the ocean. And so as soon as I walked through the space, it had more of an apartment vibe versus an office space vibe. It has like this little creek that runs through it. There's greenery everywhere. There's ducks, there's birds. And it was just so peaceful. And then seeing the space itself, it was like just a really nice space. And we were able to actually build it out the way we wanted to because it was a newer space. Like we were able to pick out like paint and flooring and all of that. So that was fun. And so that's kind of what made us choose that space. And it didn't have the traditional kind of therapist office vibe, which is not my thing. You know, I don't want to just be in your traditional therapist office.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's so funny is I'm like determined to have every member of your group on this podcast. And I've had 2 of your office mates, Julianne and Sasha, on this show. And I was teasing them because all of you talk about the freaking ducks.
We love our ducks. What can I say?
I'm like, I need to like write something into my courses and say like therapists should get a vibey office in this duck pond in it. Because like everyone, I'm waiting. I'm gonna set up Evan, and ask him like, how do you feel about the ducks in your office or outside your office? Like Sasha was telling me, like, they're circle of life and they lay eggs, and I was like, oh my god. But the ducks, and I agree with that. I think like, I don't know, like when we both were in Westlake or in LA type offices, a lot of therapists had kind of those corporate offices that were like. I always thought like it was so weird you couldn't open the window.
Right.
Like a lot of these office buildings, like the windows physically don't open. And I was like, that is so weird. And I would, maybe this is my anxiety, but I would always think like, what if there's a fire? Like this glass is so, I can't get through. Like I'm in a cube, And it's funny being in Santa Barbara because like there's such a shortage of offices here, hence why they're so expensive here. And a lot of them are these like houses that have been converted into office buildings. So they're all offices, houses. And yeah, it's just, but I think the vibe of your office matters,
It does. I think it really does. And you're going to be spending, a decent amount of time in there, depending on how big your practice is and how many clients you're seeing. So I always say it's like my home away from home. And, I love what I do and I don't feel like I work, because I love what I do so much. And I feel like I have really good balance. I don't have a huge practice. So I feel like that works for me. And I just like, I enjoy going to my office. It's like I pull up and I'm like, I get to be at work. Yay. not to say that there aren't days where I'm like, oh my God, I wish I was still in bed. Those days do happen. But for the most part, like there really is this joy of like, this is my space, and this is my home away from home.
I definitely have days where now that I am fully remote and now that I have a toddler, I'm like, God, I miss my office. Like I miss my couch and the quiet.
Yeah. I loved working from home for a while. And I actually was surprised by how much with COVID, obviously I was doing all my sessions and I feel like my practice really exploded during COVID. I got tons of referrals during that time. So I liked working from home for a long time. And this is my home. I'm in my home right now. And that's why I'm actually one of the reasons why I wanted to expand my practice to Ventura where I live, because I don't want to work at home anymore.
Yeah.
Even if I'm doing virtual sessions, I'd rather be in an office space. And then of course I want to build a practice out here. So, there's that too. But yeah, it's, I have 2 young kids. I have a 2 and a 5-year-old, and they're both in school. So during the day, it's not really a problem, but I do like having the separation of home and office. For me, that matters. And, it didn't matter for a while. And I'm big on, it depends on what season of life you're in, and we're allowed to change what we need. And
totally.
It's like something might work for you for a while and then it doesn't anymore, and you got to shift. So
yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the beauty of this career. I think, especially being a mom, there's so many ways you can build your practice around your motherhood journey too, which is incredible.
Hey, therapists. Are you listening to the show and thinking, I really want to launch my own private practice, but I have no idea where to start? Make sure to check out Kelley's Private Practice Roadmap course. In the course, Kelley gives you the exact steps you need to open your own thriving practice. You can find the link below in the show notes.
What is your schedule like now, Alex? So you have a 5-year-old and you have a 2-year-old. How does your schedule kind of work around motherhood and marriage and running a business?
Yeah, so I feel like I have the ideal schedule for me. I love my schedule.
Tell me. This is like a therapist, candy, talking about your schedule and how perfect it, I feel like half of my therapist friends are like, let me tell you about how I hacked my schedule.
I know, it's so true. And I love hearing the different schedules and what works for everybody. So I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so I'm able to I love it now because both of my kids are in school throughout the week, Monday through Friday. So now Mondays and Fridays, I get to have more me time. I go to Pilates classes. I take care of appointments that I need to on those days. I go shopping. I go grab a coffee. I have more space for myself. And then, I get to pick up my kids and have time with them and be with them on the weekends. And so it's such a good balance for me. I feel like I show up as the best version of myself as a mom, as a therapist, as a wife, as everything with the schedule that I have. And so, and then I've been working Tuesdays and Thursdays out in Westlake. I have been working Wednesdays at home, but now Wednesdays are going to be at my office.
Ventura. That's great. So when you work those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, what does your day look like in terms of do you see some evening appointments? How does that kind of work?
Yeah. So I usually start my day at 9 a.m., which is nice because I can drop my daughter off at school. I still get to do kind of that part of the routine, the morning stuff, and then I go to the office. And so I'm typically at the office from 9 to 6 and seeing clients throughout the day and supervising and doing consultation and all of that. I always schedule a lunch break. That is big for me. I am not a therapist that goes back to back to back all day long.
I don't know how people do it. We have friends that do it. And I'm like, I don't know how you're.
And I know that it works for some of my friends, that works for them. They're I get in the flow and I love it. And I just shovel my lunch into my mouth in the 10 minutes between clients. And I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't. So I usually have at least one break built in for an hour during the day. And I like to keep my practice, usually between 15 to 20 clients max. Usually my sweet spot is 15 to 18. So I love it. It works great. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then on the nights, so when you work till 6, how do you do the childcare piece?
Yeah. So I'm really lucky in that my husband works from home and he's an entrepreneur himself. So he helps out a ton, as he should,
Right.
as a
Yeah.
dad, he does his part
He
too.
does his parenting too. Yeah.
He fills his dad role.
Yeah.
And so he is usually the one doing pickups and the snack after school and getting them, kind of bathed and all of that stuff. So it's really cool because we have
a nice balance.
It is. And like on the days I don't work, on the Mondays and Fridays, like we tag team. I pick up one kid, he picks up another, then we meet up at home. Like we're really able to kind of we both have special time with each of our kids and then time together. So I feel like we're very fortunate in that we built this life in a way that can work for us like this. So
having both spouses work for themselves is pretty incredible. I feel like we meet a lot of therapists who they work for themselves and their spouse does, and like that's my case. I work for myself. My husband works for a managed care clinic. But I think having two entrepreneurs, that's pretty awesome.
It is and I mean, of course, it has its benefits and then its disadvantages for sure. But I think for us, there's more benefit than there is disadvantage. And we just all the time we're talking about how grateful we are for this life that we've created and how it makes us, we're able to do the things that we want to do both as entrepreneurs and as parents and, spouses. And, we get to go, we have lunch dates like pretty much every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday together.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So we've really created this space where it's like, let's take advantage. Like we might not have childcare in the evening all the time, or we might not be able to do the date night, but we could do a date day. We could go out to lunch together. We can have that special time too. Sometimes it's just checking in with each other. Sometimes it's talking about future goals. Sometimes it's business planning. It's like kind of takes on different things, but he's my best friend. And so we're able to really like talk things through and just love having that support. So
I love that.
It's awesome.
Maybe, we can transition to talking about too, like in relation to motherhood and all of it and marriage. Can you tell me about your maternity leaves? So you had your older daughter were you working in private practice yet or no?
I was in private practice, but I was in group practice.
Okay. So maybe tell us, can you tell us what each of those were like?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with my first daughter, who's now 5, I was planning on taking 3 months off. I was a W-2 employee. And so I had maternity leave and all of that stuff. And so I planned on maxing out and taking out, 3 months. I actually ended up taking 4 because I had an emergency C-section and, just healing and all of that went differently.
It's fucking hard to go back. Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, I need more time. I'm not ready. And so that time felt like it was definitely, there was still fear in, I'm like leaving my practice. Like, are my clients going to come back? Like, what's going to happen? And it was hard because my practice was small at the time. It was like my little side gig. And so that was kind of scary, but honestly, it ended up working out fine. It took me a little bit of time to build my practice back up to where I wanted it to be. But it actually worked out well because I was able to shift in kind of the clientele that I was working with. I wanted to shift that a bit.
You wanted to work like with more moms at that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
So after becoming a mom, having my experience, I experienced postpartum anxiety after the birth of my first. Didn't know that that's what I was going through until I took a training when I was like 6 months postpartum. And I was like, wow, I really want to work with other moms and help them. I'm like, there's a lot of people out there. I'm a therapist and I didn't even know that, what I was experiencing was PPA. Like, okay, this shit is hard. Like becoming a mom is hard. So I really wanted to do more of that work. And I wanted to shift my schedule. At the time, I was working 50, 60-hour weeks, working multiple jobs. And I was like, time to make a shift. That's actually when I did make a shift after coming back. I ended up quitting a couple things and then just focusing on my practice in the group I was a part of and doing a couple other things, but just kind of minimizing my role a little bit so I could work
Right.
less. The second time around with my 2-year-old, I ended up taking only 2 months off. And, there was definitely more, I would say, fear and anxiety in that one of what's going to happen with my practice. I will say that most of the fears did not become realized. Like I was able to, most of my clients came back. Some of the clients that didn't, it was kind of just good timing. Like they were ready to kind of be on their way. And then I was able to get new clients. And so I would say, like, if you're a mom out there in private practice who is scared about what's going to happen when you go out on maternity leave, you are not alone.
Oh, yeah.
It is scary. And also you're going to be okay and your practice is going to be okay.
100%. I mean, I think, and I remember talking about this a couple of times when we went to lunch, and like, I remember you being pregnant and you were like so glowy. I was like, who looks like that when you're pregnant? You were like, I was like, oh my God. When I've been pregnant, I'm like, but you are like the most amazing pregnant person I've ever met. And so my question too is, I know some people like, and I did this a little bit, like we'll have someone kind of cover part of their private practice, or did you do that at all? Or how did that kind of work?
I did. Yeah. So both times, like I basically referred my clients, especially, there were some that were like, no, I'm going to take a pause. I don't feel like I need to meet with someone else, but others that really needed to continue their work. So I referred out to other trusted therapists that are my friends that I really like. They are just great, And so that really helped because I knew my clients were in good hands. I knew they were being taken care of. And so that I think that's like crucial is having that plan of knowing who's going to be caring for your clients while you're away, so you can truly be away.
Oh yeah, it was nice. I found too with some clients, like, because especially for some of my longer term clients who I knew needed to see someone while I was gone, some of them like used it as an opportunity to do brain spotting or to do 8 weeks of EMDR or something that they maybe, like, to be honest with you, maybe they were paying to go to therapy once a week with me and they didn't have the funds, or, I tried to use it for some clients as a way for them to try something completely different, or even like, a therapist who I knew was completely different than me.
Yes.
Yeah. Or like I referred a lot of people to Jenny, one of our friends, and like, I feel like we're very opposite of each other in our approach. And, I think it was a good, clients got to see something different. And especially for those, like for me, for teenage clients, I think that's so beneficial to them to have, they have multiple people in their court, which is nice, and some people chose to stay with people and some people, which is totally fine. And great.
I think that's really normal. And that's something I want to like normalize for other people listening to this. Cause I think sometimes that's like, look, sometimes it feels like a sting. You feel rejected. Yeah. You're like, am I not a good therapist? Because you don't want to come back and work with me, And it's like, the reality is that's like, we all, like I said earlier, we all are in different seasons of life. We all go through different changes. And sometimes we're needing something different, and that's good. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad therapist if a client's like, I don't want to come back and work with you, or I'm going to stay with this person. Like, that is actually so common. I haven't talked to one therapist who's gone on maternity leave and referred clients to another therapist and hasn't had at least one client that has been like, no, I'm going to stay with this person,
100%. 100%.
All the time.
All the time. And like, and I get it. I think like if if my therapist went on maternity leave and I was working with someone else and I was in the middle of a good kind of piece of therapeutic work with them, like, it makes total sense. And I think that there's so much safety in clients being able to say, I did a great piece of work with you, and now, this is what I'm doing right now. And that they feel safe enough to say that, because that's not the dynamic that I feel like a lot of people get to experience in life in general. To be able to like, quote unquote, reject, which they're not, but like reject someone and have it be that person be so happy that they're figuring out the best thing for them, versus focused on their own shit.
Yeah. I think that is so true and so powerful. So
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So Alex, what would you say would be the thing you wish you had known when you first started your private practice?
Ooh, that is a good question. Honestly, I would say that the biggest thing is you can do it. Like,
Yeah.
you may want to tell yourself, I can't, for so many different reasons, whether that's an internalized message, whether that's your own self-doubt, whether that's coming from the outside, whatever, like, you can absolutely do it. It's like when I started my practice, I was like, oh my gosh, like I had made up all of these stories of how
Yeah.
hard this was going to be, of how impossible it was going to be, how everyone else could do it, but I couldn't. And like, none of that is true. None of that is true. So just do it. Like, even if you're
Just
scared,
get out there.
do it. That fear is there. It's communicating something to you. It's a good thing. It means you're changing. It means you're growing. It means you're doing something exciting. So take the leap.
Let's do it. I know. I could not agree more. And I think, one thing we also didn't talk about as much earlier in this episode is you also are venturing out on a project and doing, online courses. And we had an earlier episode with Sasha, but maybe just tell us a little bit about Thrive After Baby and what that experience has been like for you.
Yeah, my other baby.
Your other baby. Your other project you have going on, your other hat.
I love my other baby. So so I am the co-founder of Thrive After Baby, along with my very, very good friend and colleague Sasha, who Kelley already had on the podcast. And Thrive After Baby is really a community for new parents. We do have things for moms and dads. I will say, like, we're a little more geared towards moms because we're both moms,
Yeah.
So we can speak to that experience from personal experience. But really, we have an Instagram that's an online community for moms to really get the education and support that Sasha and I wish that we had when we first became moms. We were blindsided by so many unexpected challenges in motherhood, and we felt like there's so much stuff that so many moms experience, and yet no one's talking about this stuff. What the hell, So that's how Thrive After Baby was born. And so we have a community on Instagram. We also offer some cool freebies and downloads for people, as well as 2 online courses for new parents. One's kind of more geared for like kind of the individual, the mom and dad, to figure out, why does parenthood feel so hard for me? So many strategies to kind of tackle a lot of the expected and unexpected challenges. And then we have more of like our couples course that's more to support the couple and being a team after a baby. And there's so many changes that happen in our relationship after having the baby. Like, even when I was one of those people, I'm like, I have such a good relationship with my husband. We're best friends. We never fight. Like, there's no way we're going to have any challenges. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. And so, it happens to all of us, most of us. I shouldn't say all of us. I should say most of us.
I think it's everyone. I don't know anyone who's had a child who's like, I've had no conflict in my relationship.
Right.
I mean, they're just like faking it, maybe.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's like a spectrum, right? It's like some of us like have a higher end of the spectrum of like more challenges versus the lower end of the spectrum of like, okay, well, we had some challenges. So anyways, that's Thrive After Baby, just a little bit about it. And
we'll put all of the info for everything Thrive After Baby in the show notes, but maybe you could give us, again, now your one piece of advice for someone, a therapist who wants to jump into online courses. What do you wish you had known?
I wish I would have done my homework a little bit more in terms of how to launch an online, not just course, but, community or, whatever you want to call it. Like, a lot of people want to call this stuff passive income.
That shit ain't passive, okay? That is not.
It is the farthest from passive, at least in the beginning, and for a while.
I'm
so
passive, okay? Like, and I'm 2 years into this thing.
I know. And it does. It's like, you're going to put so much work and effort and passion and love into this thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it will be worth it, but do your homework. Like, I just wish I wish I would have done my homework a little bit more.
Okay, but here's the thing that I always, because I think that too. I'm like, I was for sure the person who was like creating an online course, like I already teach in a non-online setting. Like, how hard can this be?
Right.
And I think that had I done a little more research, I might not have done it.
Ooh.
And so, and I'm
Okay.
so freaking glad I did it, because you're right
Yeah.
that like launching an online product, you don't realize how much work it is until you're in it, right? You don't realize that it's not just like, oh, you put out a course and then everyone magically from the internet just comes and absorbs into your ecosystem and buys it, which is like 100% what I thought. Like, I thought just like, of course, Kelley's going to put out a course and everyone's going to know and it's going to be great. No matter how many Instagram followers I have, maybe 10, but like,
Right.
And we now know that's not the case, right? And that you have to totally work your butt off to be of service to people and build an audience. But I'm so glad I didn't know. I'm like, in a way, because then it's like, it's almost like you go in blind and you don't know what you don't know. And then like figuring it out teaches you so much, but then you're in it and you're like, I'm not giving up on this,
That's true. That's true. I kind of see it though as like almost like, your roadmap, right? Like having your roadmap helps tremendously, like, and helps you tackle like the potential pitfalls and things that like you wouldn't have known about, right? And so that's kind of the homework that I wish I would have.
That would have been helpful.
done.
The private practice, or not the private, sorry, an online course roadmap.
Exactly.
I've been tossing that idea around for a while in my brain.
I'm like, I might have an idea for you.
Yeah,
Kelley.
I know. I've really been thinking about it, and it's the thing I think about private practice is that I do think it's so much easier than people make it out to be. I truly believe it's a series of steps, and like I have people take my course and they're like, "Oh my God, I thought this was going to be so much harder than it is," and like I'm like, "No, it's actually very simple." The thing that I think about building online courses is, I think that the very first step is building an audience that comes before even building a course and learning to communicate your messaging. And so much of that is so individual of how do you like craft this ecosystem on the internet that serves people. And I think it can be very straightforward, but for me, it's required so much internal work of getting clear on who I want to be of service to. So but that's in the cooking pot or whatever they say.
Yeah.
That's in the brain.
I love it.
Well, I would need your help. That's for like, 2025 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
If I had my way, I'd lock myself in a room right now and just like crank out content. But like I have a child and I have to go to Trader Joe's today and like do some other Anyway, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. I hope everyone checks out your webpage. I am so thankful to have you as my friend, and I really appreciate you coming on today.
Me too. Thank you so much, Kelley. This was so fun. And just love it. It feels like I just talk to my friend and hang out.
That's what the podcast is. This podcast is sponsored by Simple Practice. I've been using Simple Practice since 2016, which has helped me run a smooth and profitable private practice over the years. It has simplified everything from scheduling to billing, giving me a better balance between the work I'm so passionate about and the family time I'm not willing to miss out on. Check out the episode notes to get a free 2-month trial of Simple Practice, my preferred all-in-one HIPAA-compliant solution.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ask Kelley Anything. I really am excited about today's question, so let's get into it. Here it is.
Hi, Kelley. It's Annabelle. I am actually not in private practice just yet, but it is my goal. It is my dream. But I guess my question is, I am graduating as of May, and I am feeling very lost to what kind of job I should take. Post-grad, I will be a CSW, so I'm going to be going for my LCSW. So I've gotten offers at community centers, treatment centers, I'm very interested in the hospital, but yeah, what is your suggestion for the best type of experience post-grad? Well, thank you for listening. You are amazing and so inspiring. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, Annabelle, I love this question. I think part of the reason I love it is because I've spent so long teaching graduate students, and I love that second semester of your final year trying to plan it out. So I always approach this question the same way with my students, and I'm going to tell you right now, here's how it is. You, when you're looking for a job, are obviously going to have to cover a lot of different factors. And the very first one is, what are your current needs, right? How much money do you make? What type of hours do you need to work? What's your bandwidth? How much do you need to get paid? That kind of thing. And we know that that's reality, right? So when you're first graduating as a pre-licensed associate or intern, or every state's going to call it something different, you first need to find a job that covers those bases. And at this point in your career, it's important to do that, right? Like, you're just starting out, so it's important to find a job that's working for your current needs. The second thing is, you have stated that your future goal is to open your own private practice. So that's also a need, somewhere where you can learn how to open private practice. So what I often see people doing right after graduation is trying to meet both of those needs by doing some sort of hybrid. So sometimes I'll see students, maybe they'll work part-time in a treatment center or an agency so that they get health insurance, so that they get paid consistently. And maybe they'll work part-time in a group private practice so they start to get the experience and the feeling of private practice. But sometimes private practice pre-licensed positions take longer to build, so it doesn't maybe have as much of the financial security that you might be needing. So I want to throw that idea out there to you, that you could do a hybrid, right? Part-time one place, part-time another place. Or you've mentioned kind of working in a hospital. That can be a great way to go. Sometimes people work full-time in a hospital and maybe just see 3 or 4 private practice clients a week. The other consideration you want to take into account is you need licensing hours, right? And that's the reality. So sometimes private practice is not necessarily the best place to get tons of licensing hours all at once. You might actually want to work in a hospital where you're getting a lot of clients and then see clients part-time in private practice because you're accomplishing licensing hours more quickly. So what I would encourage you to do is sit down, write out, what are my immediate needs? How much do I need to get paid? How many weeks off do I want? Do I need health insurance? Those kind of things. And then what are my future needs? And try to build a plan around those 2 things. I hope this helps. Super excited for you. Such a fun time in your career, and I'll talk to you soon.
If you would like to be featured on Ask Kelley Anything, I love getting listener questions from you guys. Anything about private practice goes. And the best way to do that is actually just to give me a call and leave me a question on my voicemail. So I'm going to tell you the phone number right now, and make sure to write it down. Here it is: 805-243-8241. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.